Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Hank South, newcomer to the On Texas Football family. We'll let Hank tell you a little bit about himself later in the show. But for the Saturday morning conversation, we always take a couple of topics, Hank, and try to really go deeper on them, or we have special guests with us. Last week we had Paul Feinbaum, which was great. This week we have Hank South. You're right behind Paul Feinbaum, Hank.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever. And I want you to be as articulate and eloquent and sarcastic, if you can. Now, in all seriousness, thanks for joining us. A couple of questions I want to put out to you. You're a newcomer. You're the new managing editor at On Texas Football. You put out an article on Friday that really polled all of our personnel at On Texas Football and asked us for our X factors in spring ball, guys that we were looking forward to, that we think can add a little something to the pot for Texas. I was really intrigued by your answers on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball. Tell folks who you chose and why. Let's start with, I'll tell them who you chose on offense. It was Nick Townsend.
Yeah.
But why you chose Nick Townsend in that regard?
Yeah, I think just entering 2026, you look at him and he's a guy that is kind of getting overlooked for as high profile of a recruit he was coming in the 2025 class. I think you look back to the back half of the 2025 season, you could tell Sark wanted to get him the ball. I mean, just look at the Texas A&M game. They give him the end around. He gets his touchdown carries. His only touchdown of the year was a rushing touchdown. But he's an athlete at heart. Like he was doing everything in high school. He's going to be he's a tight end at Texas. I just think when you look at this offense, step back a little bit at the tight end position in 2025 from where they were with Gunnar Helm, his record-breaking year the year prior. It's kind of a surprise considering you had Jack injuries. You thought we could probably get a little bit more out of that. But coming into this year, I think they can get back to that where, Nick Townsend can be more of a security blanket for Arch Manning when you think about the defense having to account for Cam Coleman on one side, Ryan Wingo on the other, Emmett Mosley in the slot, and then, other guys that they're going to deploy out there out of the backfield or whatever Sark wants to do. I just think it's going to be an opportunity for Nick Townsend to really maybe be the X factor, as we were calling it in our article, in this offense where, he can be the guy that can slip out. They can design plays to him, whether throwing it to him or handing the ball off. I just think he can be that for this offense and give and take a little more pressure off of Arch Manning passing the ball.
It's interesting. You mentioned Nick Townsend. I was talking to somebody on Friday. They said Amari Winston is having a really good winter workout phase too. They think they have two really good H-backs, for lack of a better term, in both Townsend and Winston. On defense, I thought you made a really good call here and a good reason why, and that was Graceson Littleton, the defensive back who started all of last year, right? I mean, from game one, he was a starter, but the reason you chose him as an X factor, why? Tell folks why that player in that position got your kind of ring, I guess, of endorsement.
Yeah, I think when you just look at this, Manny Muhammad's gone. They're losing guys to the draft. That's going to be a critical position. They're playing. We just put out ESPN put out their rankings, their quarterback rankings. They're playing, I think, 5 top 20 quarterbacks in Power 4 football this year. Wherever he lands is going to dictate how this defense, whether they succeed or they regress. I don't think they're going to regress. I think the secondary is going to be really good. Whether he ends up opposite of Cade Phillips or Bo Masco, however that's going to work out, or if he plays more nickel, like we saw him as a true freshman, wherever he goes, and he has that versatility that the staff loves, I think is going to show a lot about, or, that's going to tell us a lot about how this defense is going to perform. So I think his versatility, the fact that they can use him in different formations, different packages, he doesn't have to just be an outside corner. Heck, he could probably even play safety if they wanted to do it with him, with his versatility and how dynamic of a player he is. So I think having him and the options he gives Will Muschamp, gives Blake Gideon, gives Mark Orfe is going to do a lot for this defense.
See, that's what I like about that decision, because when you talk about things like X factor, what does that mean? Well, it means giving them variety in some levels, right? And doing something a little different. And then to your point, if he can play nickel, if he can play corner, I think it gives them that variety. I'll be interested to see what Bo Masco can do. We'll get a chance to see him on Monday out at practice. The Rutgers cornerback transfer, he could play a little nickel as well. So what Texas does with that group is going to be interesting. My picks for those were Jermaine Bishop on offense. And I mentioned him here because here's the reality. Texas doesn't have a lightning fast slot receiver. Ryan Niblett is not a slot receiver. He's playing running back for Texas. I mean, he plays in that boutique role like Keelan Robinson used to play at running back. So Texas doesn't have that lightning fast slot. Jermaine Bishop is that guy. Is he ready for prime time? I don't know. That's why I think he could be an X factor, but I don't know that he necessarily is. He's a true freshman. I mean, Hank, you covered Alabama back in the day. You saw what Jalen Waddle can add to an offense with that kind of speed, and we'll see. I mean, Jalen Waddle's that's a big shoes to be in that category, but at the same time, that's the kind of player from a speed perspective that you're potentially talking about. You get him in to have 15 to 25 catches as a freshman, all of a sudden he's opening up the offense and working for Sark in a different way than the other receivers necessarily are.
Yeah, and if you look at, Jalen Waddle, just, you brought him up, it's almost, and again, we're comping like big time receivers that went in the first round, but you look at his freshman season in 2018 at Alabama. I mean, there's that famous picture of them all walking is Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, and Henry Ruggs the third. And then Jalen Waddle was able to kind of make his footprint on the offense or make his stamp on the offense. But at the same time, if you look at Bishop, like there's not going to be as much pressure for him to come and perform. Like he can just kind of play his game. I mean, if it's not going to be.
Yeah, he doesn't have to be the dude.
Right. Yeah.
And
that might free him up or make him feel a little bit more comfortable to just kind of do his thing because there's no pressure. You don't have to go out there and start. You don't have to be the guy. Cam Coleman's the guy. Ryan Wingo can be the guy. Like those guys will handle being the guy. You just go play your game and do what you do and why they brought you to Texas. And so I think that helped Jalen Waddle build his confidence a lot. And obviously Jalen Waddle is a freak athlete, but with Bishop, I think of Malachi Tony too. Like maybe, he's more of a focal point on the Miami offense, but another guy that just kind of came in and carried on what he did in high school to the next level.
Yeah. Slip screens, run, jet reverses, that kind of stuff. You just don't know, but my point about him as being an X factor, he's categorically different than any other receiver on the roster. Yeah. And so I think he could add that extra ounce of energy. On defense, I went with Josiah Sharma, the redshirt freshman defensive tackle. The reason I went with Sharma, Hank, was really simple. I felt like, look, we know what Alex January brings. Hero Canoe is returning. Murad Watson, people are saying, is having a really good winter workout. Then they got Ian Jaffrard out of the transfer portal from Arkansas. Jerry reported he's down in the 370s now from 390, which is a good report from Jerry yesterday. But my reason for picking Sharma is I think he's as talented or more talented than all of those guys. Now, is he the player yet of those guys? And the answer there is probably not. Right. But if Texas wants an interior disruptor at nose, he may be the guy because he's the most athletic of that group while still being 340, 350 pounds. He could potentially, in my opinion, add an X factor to the defense.
Yeah, I like that pick. And I kind of look back at his high school recruitment, and it's like he was playing offensive line for high school. He switched to defensive line more his senior year at Folsom, which is a powerhouse high school. And I know it sounds silly, but now in this NIL era where, if you're not playing year one, you're gone, you're going to go somewhere else. You almost kind of root for the guys that, stick around for year two almost at this part, where it could be easy to go home back to California and play somewhere else. I'm sure he got interest and was getting calls. But yeah, I agree. And I think, these big, aggressive, interior defensive linemen year two with Kenny Baker and learning under him and now Will Muschamp to kind of, play in that structure of a defense. I think he could do big things for sure.
All right. I want to ask you one more question, then we'll get into give you guys a little bit more detail about who Hank is and all that stuff. Hank, one of the big topics this offseason has been the offensive line and how it's going to gel during spring ball. Well, when you and I were talking pre-meeting, we both said offensive line is clearly the position group that we think everybody needs to be paying attention to. But it's kind of like saying, who's the most important player at Texas? Everybody's going to say Arch Manning. Well, what's the most important position group to watch? It's offensive line. So let me ask you this. In your opinion, what's the second most important position group to watch in spring ball?
Oh, man. What I'm most intrigued to see is running back and tight end. Maybe it's not the most important to the team, but I think you're replacing an entire running back room for the most part. You're bringing in a new running backs coach in Jabbar Jalouk. The running game was not Texas's strong suit. They had to lean on Arch Manning's feet a lot for a lot of the season. They just didn't get the same production or the consistent production out of Wisner and Baxter, and obviously injuries played a role in that. But you bring in Raleek Brown from Arizona State, Hollywood Smothers from NC State. These are guys that can make the offensive line look better, like just with their elusiveness, their electric running styles. They can catch the ball out of the back, but they can cover up mistakes more so than what Texas has had at running back with Wisner. That's no shot at Wisner or Baxter. They're just different style backs. They're a little bit more, and I've been saying this the last few months since they've been committed or signed, kind of get back to more to that Jaden Blue role where I think Texas was missing a lot of that in 2025 and his breakaway and home run ability. So I'm really curious to see that position, see Michael Terry, see how he's, I think he's, now full-time running back. He made the move from wide receiver to running back. And, obviously he's kind of that bigger body, maybe goal line, red zone guy. And then James Simon's back for another year. And then obviously Derek Cooper. How can you forget about him? A true freshman that could probably almost have that same CJ Baxter kind of contribution that we saw in 2023, where it looked like he was going to be, built to his ranking. So running back and then tight end, we talked about Townsend, Michael Masunas coming from Michigan State. Sark loves 12 personnel. I think Townsend and Masunas, and even like you mentioned, Amari Winston, those guys being able to give them options out of that formation and inline running game and get those guys split out and whatnot. I think that's gonna unlock a lot more from this offense in Sark's play calling sheet.
I was told on Friday by someone that Masunas is the best blocking tight end Texas has had since Sark's been at Texas.
Wow.
Not close in their opinion. That's how highly he is thought of. Now, that doesn't mean he's necessarily going to be number one, but I'm just telling you, that's what I was told from behind the scenes. They feel strongly he's going to be the best blocking tight end at Texas that they've had.
Okay.
Take it for what it's worth, but JT Sanders was not known for his blocking. Yeah. No doubt about it, right? Gunnar Helm, even though he was a decent blocker and making money in the NFL, he was more of a pass receiving tight end. Yeah. Last year, Jack Indries tried to improve, but more of a receiving tight end. Even Nick Townsend now, he'll come back and hit you. We know that.
Yeah.
But is he a long-armed blocker? Not necessarily. Masunas, they're really high on him. So that's interesting that you mentioned them. My second position is really the secondary.
Yeah.
I'm just intrigued. We talked about this earlier in this podcast. What do you do with Bo Masco alongside of Grayson Littleton, who both can play multiple positions? And is Cade Phillips, we're all assuming that Cade Phillips has come along far enough because he started the bowl game. Okay, it's time for him to take over. Is he?
Yeah.
Or is that just in our mind? You know what I mean? Is it in the coach's mind, or is he actually ready to go do it on the field each and every day in practice, compared to two newcomers potentially in Littleton playing corner, as well as Bo Masco potentially playing corner. And then what do you do with Jelani McDonald's sidekick if Xavier Filsame's not there? Who fills that? Is it Jordan Johnson-Rebel, somebody else? But I think, and let's be blunt, I mean, new coaches on defense. Will Muschamp will be coordinating the defense, and you have Blake Gideon coming back as safeties coach. No more Kenodo Hudson at nickel as nickel's coach. So all of that together is interesting to me. We'll be there on on Monday morning. The practice starts, we're being told, at 9 a.m. That'll be our viewing session. So hopefully we all get to have more of it. Hank, I've got to ask you this, just talking to you about yourself a little bit. I want you to tell folks about who you are, how you joined us and all of that other stuff, so they get a sense of how you're going to be helping us out here at On Texas Football going forward.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm originally from Austin. I was born in San Antonio, but I've lived in Austin since I was 4 months old. So I can't really say I'm from San Antonio. But graduated from Westlake High School 2009. Did a year at UTSA CAP program. Transferred to Texas. Graduated in 2013. Sport management. Wrote for the Daily Texan a little bit. And then out of college, I worked at County Line Barbecue for a long time through high school.
That was the ultimate until Franklin barbecue, basically.
Yeah,
for a lot of people. Yeah,
I mean, it's still probably the ultimate view in Austin on that hill overlooking 20-mile view out to the hill country. But did that for a while. Then out of college, decided I needed a salary. I was 22. I was probably okay to keep waiting tables for a minute, but I went and worked at Enterprise Rent a Car for a year and a half. Thought that was something. And then I got a call. There was opening at 24/7 Sports to cover Alabama without having to move to Alabama. And I was like, hey, let's give this a try. I have no kids, live in an apartment. If I fail, it's a learning experience. But that learning experience went on for 8 years. Covered Alabama for a long time from Texas. Then I switched over to covering Texas for 24/7 Sports back in 2023. And it was funny when I left, a lot of people were like, "You don't live in Alabama?" Like, what? But my wife is from Alabama. Funny enough, like she's from Birmingham. Her whole family's Alabama fans. So, we were out there a lot. But covered Texas for the last 3 years. Obviously, that's been my dream. It's my alma mater. It's the school I grew up rooting for. And that was always the hope I could get back to doing this job in the Texas market. And now I'm here, and obviously, the fastest growing, website, YouTube page, everything for Texas and On Texas Football. So I'm really excited to be here, to be with this staff. I think it's the best in the market, and I think big things are coming.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. We're excited about you. You are the managing editor of ontexasfootball.com. You certainly deserve that and have earned that. And we appreciate you joining us. Also, you got a couple of young ones at home as well, so you're feeding the family with this job of yours. It's done you okay. Hey, a couple questions for you, just so people get a sense, because there are Texas fans across the ages, across age groups that listen to our podcast, and I always we try to keep. I try to do a thing where we have somebody that represents almost every age group at some level. And you hit a certain segment for us. So I got to ask you your favorite childhood memory of the Longhorns, and then your favorite adult memory of the Longhorns, just to give people a sense of where you fit in the timeline of Texas football.
Yeah. So my first memory, it's funny. Like I think it was 1998. So I'm 34, almost 35. So it was 1998. I remember I was in Llano with my dad for something. I don't know why. We were in a hotel room. But Texas was playing, I want to say Stanford. It was Major Applewhite. And I had never really, I was 7, 8 years old. Like I never really keyed into watching sports yet, I guess. My dad was telling me how big of a deal Texas football is. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Really liked the helmet decals. I the shiny lights in the helmets. I very intrigued. And I started following it after that. I guess if you want, like as a kid, does high school count as a kid? I guess,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, freshman year, 2005. I mean, I will never forget watching, the whole season, I went to a few of the games, season opener, I think in 2005, was that Louisiana Monroe or
something like that?
It was watch that, Vince Young's, his big game there. I think it was like 63-7 or something, the final score. I went to Waco to see them play Baylor, and I'll never forget, they were up big on Baylor, and Vince Young carried the ball, went down, and he came up grabbing his knee. And I remember, I literally felt like my soul leave my body. I was like, oh my God, because backup was Matt Nordgren. I don't think he was going to carry Texas to the national championship like Vince Young did. But watching that game in my living room with my parents, they win, obviously. I'm freaking out. It's a core memory. My dad was like, we got to go down to campus. So we drive down there. We wait in the co-op line for all the merchandise. It was shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't move to get a shirt. People are honking. That's one of my favorite memories of all time. So I was 14 or 15 or whatever it was. So never forget that. I'm always thankful that I saw that, even being a student at Texas, I was always thankful that happened in like one of the most formative years of my life, like that I'll never forget it. I wasn't too young to forget it, and wasn't past college or anything. So I really enjoyed that. Favorite adult memory, I think it's got to be my first year back covering Texas. Drove out to Tuscaloosa, and having covered Alabama for 8 years, I knew all these Alabama players and Alabama fan base, but to come into Tuscaloosa and watch that game from the stands and see that was one of the most electric atmospheres. They're playing Dixieland Delight after the third quarter. Bama comes back, looks like they're gonna maybe pull away, and Texas takes care of business. So that was that's probably my favorite adult memory so far. And Clemson playoff game was really fun too. But I think that Alabama win, that was obviously kind of okay. Texas is here. Sark's kind of first statement win as head coach.
Well, you're right. I was at that Alabama game as well, and you're right about that third quarter. It felt like Alabama was going to assert themselves, and all of a sudden, Texas just said no, thank you. Right. A typical Texas team might have faltered historically over the last 10 years. They had faltered in that situation up to that point, and they didn't falter that night. And frankly, it's been a snowball running downhill almost ever since. Hopefully we get a chance to see them on Monday at practice and get to see what the first glimpse of the 2026 team looks like. All right, I know you'll be out there with me, Hank South. I appreciate your time. Welcome to On Texas Football, you and your family. And I think everybody here is happy. Please join us on ontexasfootball.com. Make sure you check out Hank's work there. He'll also be appearing here as well for us. So that'll do it for today's Saturday conversation. For Hank South and our producer, Matt Hudson, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.